Desert-born shadows. The desert stretched endlessly, a sea of gold and sorrow under the burning sun. Life was a fragile whisper here, broken by wind and hunger, where the smallest mistake could mean death. In a forgotten corner near the village, a German shepherd puppy was born. His mother had once been proud, trained to serve humans, trained to protect, trained to obey. But when sickness and weakness overtook her, she was abandoned. No warmth awaited the newborn puppy. No comforting hands. Only cold sand and endless silence. He nuzzled his mother, searching for life, but her body was already failing. The puppy whimpered softly, instinct telling him to stay close, even though she could no longer give him anything. Hunger bit immediately. His stomach twisted, empty and cruel. Outside, a lone camel, old and frail, tied to a broken post, watched silently. Its hump was sagging, its eyes clouded with age and pain. Once it had carried heavy loads across the desert, now it had nothing. The puppy crawled toward the camel's shadow, instinctively seeking the first comfort it could find. The camel lowered its head slightly, a silent acknowledgement. The puppy curled beside it, shivering. The night was long, cold, and merciless. Sandstorms came without warning, battering the tiny lives below. The puppy tried to stay close, his small paws digging into the camel's legs for stability. The camel braced against the wind, shielding him as best as he could. Days passed with the same cruelty. Hunger did not rest. Thirst did not rest. Pain was a constant companion. The puppy learned quickly that movement was costly, that silence could save energy. He foraged near broken pottery and scattered scraps. Sometimes he found water puddles, muddy and bitter, but he drank anyway. The camel grazed on sparse desert weeds, chewing slowly, eyes always on the puppy. They had no name for companionship, no language to explain loyalty, yet a bond formed through shared suffering. Humans appeared rarely, and when they did, it was never kindness. Children threw stones. Men laughed. Useless, one said. Weak, another said. The puppy flinched, but never ran far. He learned fear fast, because the desert never forgave hesitation. Nights were the worst. The cold penetrated to the bone. The puppy shivered until exhaustion overtook him, curling under the camel's belly. He slept with nightmares already etched in his mind. Sometimes he dreamed of warmth, of a soft hand, of safety, and awoke to the harsh sand again. Weeks passed. The puppy's fur lost its sheen, his eyes grew older than his days, and hunger carved thin lines across his body. The camel grew weaker, its legs trembling under the sun. Once, a stronger wind tore the rope from the post, allowing the camel to wander a few steps. The puppy followed blindly, clumsy, almost tripping over his own legs. They moved together, two fragile beings against a desert that did not care. One day, a truck passed along the distant road. A man saw the camel and laughed. Too old, too weak, he said. The puppy barked weakly, startling himself. Nothing else happened. Survival continued silently, painfully. The puppy learned small lessons in pain. Trash could be food. Mud puddles could hide water. Shade was a treasure. The camel learned too. He learned that standing for another life, even when weak, was worth his last strength. One night, the wind brought sand into the camel's wounds. The puppy licked the cuts instinctively, not knowing it would not heal. Yet both survived, moving step by step, breath by breath. Months passed, the desert never changing, hunger never ceasing. The puppy became stronger, but still thin, still fragile, still haunted by the absence of his mother. He learned to follow the camel, to shield from the wind, to rest under the faint shadow it could provide. One afternoon, a young boy approached, carrying water. He noticed the camel first, then the puppy, and froze. Slowly, he poured water near the camel's mouth. The camel drank weakly, barely moving. Then the boy knelt and offered water to the puppy. Saya, as the boy later named him, drank desperately. For the first time, relief touched him, small and fleeting. The boy whispered something gentle, a voice that did not harm, and left some food near the camel. That night, the camel's breathing slowed. The puppy pressed close, nudging his companion, crying softly. Morning revealed the inevitable. The camel was gone. Saya's small body trembled violently. He sniffed, barked weakly, pressed his nose against the cold, still body. No warmth, no breath. Only the desert. Hunger and grief combined, heavier than either alone. Days turned into a painful rhythm. Saya wandered the sands, searching for shade, water, and some memory of the camel's protective body. He survived, barely. Hunger never left, grief never left, and the desert stretched infinitely ahead. Yet somewhere faintly, the boy's return had left a trace. A promise not understood but faintly known that, even in a cruel world, survival was still possible, and sometimes it demanded every ounce of broken strength. Saya limped forward, eyes scanning every shadow, every distant movement. Life continued, relentless, unforgiving. The desert kept its secrets, but a small puppy, born under its harsh sun, refused to surrender. Step by step, day by day, Saya moved forward, carrying the memory of loyalty, love, and loss within his tiny, aching heart.
Alone in the shifting sand, Saya, the German Shepherd puppy, woke to a desert that seemed emptier than the night before. The camel was gone forever, leaving him with memories too heavy for his small body. Hunger gnawed fiercely, sharper than the wind that swept across the dunes. He stumbled forward, legs weak, paws sinking into the burning sand. Every movement demanded effort, every breath hurt. The village was miles away, yet he could smell human life faintly, the mixture of smoke, dust, and cooking fire carried by the heat. The boy had returned only briefly before, leaving behind water and the faintest trace of hope. Saya remembered the cool shadow of the camel, the way its body had protected him during storms, the soft, quiet strength that had kept him alive. Now there was only silence. The puppy's small heart beat faster with panic, yet he forced himself onward. As the sun rose high, the heat became merciless. Each step weighed more than the last. His tongue hung dry and cracked, his stomach roared in protest. He stopped under a lone withered tree, a fragile remnant of life in the harsh desert. Saya rested there, trembling, trying to find comfort in shade that barely existed. In the distance, he saw movement, a figure approaching slowly. Fear surged through him. Humans were unpredictable. Sometimes they offered kindness, sometimes pain. He crouched low, ears flattened, muscles ready to run. It was the boy. Saya recognized the small frame, the gentle voice, the careful footsteps. Relief washed over him, yet fear lingered. The boy knelt, holding a small bowl of water. Saya approached cautiously, sniffing the air. The boy whispered, "I won't leave you." Saya drank desperately, spilling most of it on the sand. He had almost forgotten the taste of water, almost forgotten the sensation of care. Days passed with the boy feeding him small amounts of food, offering minimal shelter under the shade of a half-broken shed. Saya's body slowly regained strength, yet his spirit was haunted. The camel's absence was a wound that refused to heal. At night, he cried softly, waking the boy repeatedly. The boy's hands were small, but they stroked Saya's fur gently, offering reassurance where words could not reach. One evening, a storm swept across the desert, sand whipping furiously. Saya's small body shivered violently. The boy held him close under the fragile shelter, whispering encouragement. The puppy learned again that survival was not just hunger and thirst, it was closeness, touch, and the smallest gestures of care. Weeks turned into months. Saya grew stronger, yet he never forgot the weight of loss. One day, men arrived in the village looking for labor and work. They noticed Saya, German Shepherd features standing out even in his thin, fragile frame. "Train him," one said. "He can be sold or used." Fear surged in Saya. He remembered ropes, the truck, the camel, and the boy's desperate protection. Panic made him run. He fled toward the dunes, limping from exhaustion. The villagers laughed, shaking their heads. The boy ran after him, shouting, calling his name softly. Saya paused, glancing back. He wanted to trust but feared betrayal. Hunger pulled at him. Fatigue weighed him down, yet instinct forced him to follow the boy. The sun set behind red clouds. The desert seemed endless. Night brought cold, piercing into bones. Saya shivered, curling into himself for warmth. The boy stayed near, careful not to startle him. "It's okay, Saya," he whispered. "I won't leave." Days became a rhythm of survival. The boy found scraps of food, little water, protection from the sun. Saya followed, weak yet persistent. His memories of the camel haunted him. Every shadow reminded him of the loyal companion who had shielded him in storms. He learned that loss never left, that grief could accompany hunger, that loneliness could press harder than heat. One morning, a man arrived at the edge of the village with a small medical kit. He examined Saya roughly, mumbling words the puppy did not understand. Fever, infection, weakness, diseases of the poor, he said. The boy tried to help, mixing medicine with water. Saya lapped it reluctantly, too tired to resist, too aware of his fragility. Nights became longer, darker, filled with trembling. Saya sometimes cried into the sand, small yelps swallowed by the wind. Hunger returned constantly, gnawing at every bone. He remembered the camel's protective body, the shade it had given, the quiet lessons of endurance. That memory became his guide. Slowly, painfully, his legs strengthened. Slowly, the puppy learned that survival demanded both fear and courage. The desert remained harsh, indifferent, yet the boy's presence made small miracles possible. Saya learned to trust again, inch by inch. But deep inside, the wound of loss refused to heal. Every step forward reminded him of the companion who had saved him, who had taught him the first lessons of loyalty and love. Months passed. Saya grew, thin yet resilient. The boy carried him through storms, hunger, and nights filled with fear. The village remained unkind. Children threw stones, neighbors whispered that the dog was useless. But Saya survived because the bond with the boy reminded him of something he had learned from the camel. Loyalty is stronger than pain, stronger than hunger, stronger than the desert. One evening, Saya lay beside the boy, watching the sun bleed red into the sand. His body ached, his eyes heavy. But for the first time, he felt a tiny ember of peace. He was not alone. And even in the cruel desert, with hunger and loss never far, that ember was enough to keep going. Step by step, day by day, Saya learned that survival was both gift and punishment. Hunger would always return. Pain would always return. But so would small kindnesses. The shadow of the camel lingered in memory. The boy's hand provided warmth, and the desert, vast and unyielding, could not break him completely. Life continued, cruel and slow, yet Saya walked forward, carrying grief, hope, and a fragile trust that tomorrow might be different, even if only slightly. The desert whispered over the dunes, a constant reminder that loyalty and survival could coexist in the smallest, most fragile hearts. Shadows of yesterday's Saya, the German shepherd puppy, had survived the desert, hunger, and the loss of the camel, yet every step forward reminded him of what he had lost. The boy remained his fragile anchor, but even with him, the world was heavy, cruel, and unpredictable. Days blended into nights, sand into stone, hunger into fatigue. Each morning, Saya woke to the heat pressing down on his thin body. His stomach twisted endlessly, yet he had learned to ration his energy, to move only when necessary. The boy carried scraps of food, little water, and quiet words that Saya could sense, though he did not fully understand them. The village around them remained unkind. Children laughed cruelly at the small, ragged dog, tossing stones when the boy's attention drifted. Men and women stared, muttering about how useless the puppy was. Saya flinched at each sound, remembering ropes, trucks, and the harsh hands of strangers. He had learned fear thoroughly, yet something deeper grew inside him, resilience. One afternoon, a storm rose suddenly, black clouds rolling over the dunes. Wind tore at the boy's thin jacket, at Saya's fur. Sand whipped across their bodies like punishment. Saya pressed himself against the boy, shivering violently. Lightning split the sky, thunder shaking the desert. Saya had seen storms before, but never like this. The camel's shadow, once a comfort, had vanished. He had only the boy now, the tiny hand that tried to calm him through trembling nights. The storm lasted hours. By the time it passed, both were exhausted, covered in sand, bodies aching yet alive. The desert did not reward survival. It only demanded more. Weeks turned into months. Saya's body strengthened, but his spirit remained scarred. Hunger was a constant companion, grief a relentless teacher. He remembered the camel constantly, the large body that had protected him, the quiet patience, the unspoken loyalty. These memories were both warmth and pain, a shadow he carried with every step. One morning, men from the village came searching for labor, eyeing Saya. Train him, he could be sold or used, one said. Fear surged inside Saya, raw and instant. He bolted, limping through the sand, small pores burning. The boy chased him, calling his name gently, voice quivering with worry. Saya paused, watching the distant figure of the boy. Part of him wanted to trust, part of him remembered only pain. Hunger forced him to move. Fatigue slowed him. Yet instinct and a faint memory of protection guided him. That night Saya hid under a low ledge of rock, trembling violently. Wind swept sand into every crevice, stinging his eyes. He whined softly, a sound the boy eventually heard. The boy arrived with water and scraps of bread. Saya approached cautiously, trembling, muscles tense. He drank slowly, licking the bowl desperately but nervously, not sure if kindness would end in betrayal again. Days merged into nights. Survival became a rhythm of fear, hunger, and small acts of care. Saya grew larger, but his body still bore the marks of neglect. Thin ribs showed beneath fur, scars ran across legs and chest, and his eyes always held that faint shadow of loss. Every sound in the village set his nerves on edge. Shouting men, barking dogs, laughing children. He learned which sounds meant danger and which meant safety. The boy's presence became the constant line between hope and despair. One evening, Saya collapsed, exhausted from chasing after minimal food and water. The boy held him tightly, whispering soothing words, brushing sand from his fur. For hours, Saya trembled, trying to rest. Hunger and fatigue had become companions he could not escape. The boy never left. He stayed through trembling nights, through quiet storms, through moments when Saya's heart almost gave up. Slowly, life returned to the puppy's limbs. He began to walk longer, eat better, drink steadily, and rest without panic. Yet the shadow of the camel lingered in every memory. Nights were hardest. Saya dreamt of the camel's broad, protective body, of the wind shielded by loyalty, of nights that had warmth he had never truly known. Morning always brought reality back. The harsh sun, the village's cruelty, the relentless hunger. Saya learned that survival was both gift and punishment. One morning, a stranger approached the boy, offering to take Saya. Fear surged again. Saya barked, trembling violently. The boy refused, holding him close. The bond had grown deeper than memory, deeper than hunger, deeper than pain. Saya realized something profound. He had learned trust, though slowly and cautiously. The desert had taken the camel, hunger had taken his innocence, humans had taken his safety, yet he survived. His body ached, his mind ached, but the ember of life burned fiercely. Step by step, Saya walked beside the boy, learning that survival demanded both courage and caution, loyalty and patience. The desert whispered over the dunes, relentless and cruel, yet Saya moved forward, carrying grief, memory, and the faintest spark of hope. He did not know what lay ahead. He only knew that he could survive, that he would endure, and that the shadow of love and loyalty, first taught by a camel and now held by a boy, would guide him through the endless sands.